Good morning and a very warm welcome from Dresden, Germany. My name is Markus Egermann from the Leibniz-Institut of Ecological, Urban and Regional Development in Dresden. I'm your moderator today, and I'm very happy to welcome our speaker to the IOER-Forum today, which is Michaela Trippl, and she is a full professor of economic geography from the University of Vienna, works there in the Department of Geography and Regional Research. She is also head of a working group on human geography and economic geography, and she is vice dean of research in her university. That sounds already like a full-time job, but she has also a professorship from the University of Agder, that's in Norway. And before she moved to Vienna for her current position, 2016, she was associate professor in innovation studies at Lund University, which is in Sweden. She earned her PhD in economics from the University of Vienna, where she is today. And I think many of us know her also from literature. She has co-authored several books, and she has published a considerable amount of articles in journals most of us know, or we all know, high-ranking international journals such as Economic Geography or Regional Studies. Moreover, she is elected as a fellow of the Academy of Social Science of the United Kingdom, and currently she serves also as a member of the board of the Austrian Science Fund and a member of the Scientific Committee of the European Commission, and they're in the Partnership for Regional Innovation. And she is also member of the Research Committee of the Regional Studies Association. The main focus of her research, which is really enormous and broad, is on the geography of innovations and the geography of sustainability transitions. And this is very recent and very current topic on challenge-oriented innovation policy. We all know about the mission orientation of the Commission and of different programs. And at this interface, she has worked a lot. This is also why we invited her, and we are very curious to hear her presentation today for the next 40 minutes. The title she has chosen is Towards a Challenge-Oriented Approach to Regional Innovation Policies. Michaela Trippl, we are very happy to have you with us this morning, and I will hand over the floor to you. We are very keen to see your presentation.
So, good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So greetings from Vienna to Dresden. Thanks a lot for inviting me to give a talk, and many thanks for the kind introduction. So let me start by saying a few words about the background of my talk and the overall context, a context that is marked by, as we all know, by an enormous transformation imperative. And given this imperative for transformation, there is a growing consensus that the current generation of regional innovation policies requires a critical rethinking and a reorientation. The challenges and crises of our times, the climate urgency and the resumption of spatial inequality, sudden shocks like pandemics or the wars, they all call for new policy approaches that help to build sustainable structures and pathways in response to those societal challenges. So we need approaches that help to promote socio-economic, socio-technical, and socio-ecological transitions. And of course, many of the crises and challenges that I just mentioned, they are global in nature, right? So they require global responses, national responses. But also regions and the regional policy level matter. And this is because of two reasons. First one is that the consequences of crisis are felt most directly at the regional level. And we know that grand societal challenges like climate change, loss of biodiversity, and so on and so forth, they manifest themselves differently depending on the region under consideration. And we also know that deep societal transformation and innovative solutions emerge in concrete territories. And there are now really high hopes that new policy approaches, such as regional mission-oriented approaches or problem-oriented approaches or place-based, challenge-oriented approaches. This is what we here in Vienna really propagate, so that these new place-based approaches could facilitate innovation activities that propel the urgently required transitions. And this recent work draws quite a lot of inspiration from the wider body of literature on new scientific frames for innovation policy, which are clearly reflected in work on mission-oriented policies and transformative innovation policies. And while, well, these new approaches are place-blind approaches, they are still very relevant and an important source of inspiration for the more place-based versions of it. They are important because they propose a new innovation policy paradigm. So these new approaches, mission-oriented approach and transformative innovation policy approach, they really question policies that focus primarily on innovation for economic growth. They propose a shift in policy focus towards addressing societal challenges. They stress that innovation does not only have a rate, but also a direction, and that in this context, a sole focus on fixing market failures and repairing structural system failures is inadequate. So we need to rethink the goals of policy and how we justify policy intervention. And this way of thinking is clearly evident in Matsukato's work on mission-oriented innovation policies. This is an approach that builds on the idea that the so-called grand societal challenges should be the starting point for policy making, and that these challenges could be more or less easily transformed into clearly defined policy goals, and that policymakers should shape and create markets and not only fix market failures. And this new way of thinking is also evident in Schott and Steinmüller's work, who really propose a new framing for innovation policy, which they call transformative change. So a frame that refers to innovation as a means to invoke radical system change. And this does not only involve technological progress, technological innovations and shifts in production processes. So industrial transition, so to say. It also involves changes in consumption patterns and ways of living. So transformative change, radical system change is seen as a sound strategy to address a diverse range of sustainability challenges. And this deviates quite a bit from older approaches, right? So older approaches that see the role of innovation in contributing to economic growth, approaches that confine the role of innovation policy to fix market failures and structural system failures. There is now a new set of system failures that is increasingly coming into focus, so-called transformative system failures, which include directionality, demand articulation, coordination, and reflexivity failures. So these new frames that I just mentioned, they have been quite influential. They have informed national and perhaps even more importantly, supranational policies. So in Europe, it's evident that the supranational policy landscape is in transition. So just think of the European Green Deal, Europe's contribution to the SDGs. There is now the European Green Deal Industrial Plan, just being presented a few days ago. There is the Next Generation EU, or the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which aims to promote, amongst other things, green transitions and sustainable and inclusive growth and social and territorial cohesion. There is the EU missions, such as adaptation to climate change. Horizon Europe is providing a good deal of directionality, and so on and so forth. An interesting aspect, or a side note, so to say, is that these shifts in policy landscapes and these new EU policy programs, they are taking place or are developed in a new context. We are moving towards an era of strategic competition. In Europe, this is called open strategic autonomy. So EU has recognized how vulnerable and how dependent it is from other parts of the world. So just think of the war in the Ukraine or the pandemic, which has really shown how vulnerable Europe is. And now Europe is in the process of decoupling from China and also decoupling to some extent from the United States. There are things such as bringing production back to Europe, developing green technologies that will matter for the future, for energy transitions, for mobility transitions within Europe. Some observers even argue that this would imply the end of globalization as we know it. So these are really exciting times, and also there are good reasons to worry for a variety of things. But this is really the new context, and we can only understand these changes at the EU policy level if we also take into consideration this new context, this new era of strategic competition. So anyway, so the Green Deal and other European policies are clearly impacting current regional policy practices. In Europe, they are guided by the concept of smart specialization, and smart spec is, as we all know, a very advanced concept. It advocates place-based and evidence-based innovation policies, or to be more precise, innovation-driven industrial policies. This is the more correct thing to say about smart spec. So place-based and evidence-based policies that support the modernization of regional economies and their diversification into new fields. And this diversification effort should be based on regional strengths, on historically grown assets. And these assets that are inherited from the past should serve as a platform for diversification. The concept supports regions to channel public resources into a few selected priority areas that show such diversification potentials. And policy actors are also told to involve stakeholders into policy prioritization processes by setting up inclusive governance structures to ensure what is called a collective entrepreneurial discovery process. So what do we know about how the concept has been implanted on the ground? There is, in the meantime, a lot of empirical evidence that shows that some regions, in particular the developed ones, have been quite successful in developing smart spec strategies. But there is also evidence, also empirical work that points to policy coordination failures, to various prioritization and stakeholder inclusion challenges, in particular in less developed regions. So in regions with limited diversification potentials and weak institutional capacities, we could observe the selection of priority areas that show a bias towards existing paths. And there is also evidence that the inclusion of stakeholders have been quite challenging. In particular, civil society has not been well represented. So smart spec practices have featured a rather elitist approach to innovation. And then there have been a lot of critique on the concept itself. We can talk about that later if you want. There is one fundamental critique of smart spec that I would like to mention. This critique has been that it is a rather conventional growth-oriented approach, and that given the challenges of our times, a stronger emphasis on environmental and social goals is needed. The good news is that smart spec is on the move now. So recent work has sought to adapt the smart spec approach to respond to societal challenges, to social and environmental problems. The Joint Research Center in Seville has come up with a framework for smart specialization for sustainability. They call it Partnerships for Regional Innovation, but it's a place-based innovation policy approach for sustainability. And well, the idea is that the idea is to link regional innovation policies, transformative regional innovation policies, with the goal of the European Green Deal and other EU policies. So the intention is to link place-based opportunities and challenges to a new generation of EU policies. And the Partnerships for Regional Innovation approach is a quite interesting approach, I would say. It breaks with smart specialization as we know it. It adds directionality towards sustainability to transformation. The so-called entrepreneurial discovery process should be replaced by what the JRC calls an open discovery process. And this implies, amongst other things, to broaden engagement by including new sets of stakeholders, and more attention should be given to coordination failures. So transformative change, transformative innovation requires more than innovation policy, than industrial policy. There's also a need to bring on board other policy areas such as energy policy or labor market policy, environmental policy, social policies. And as we know, these different policies, they tend to operate in silos. So overcoming coordination challenges is really a central theme in all the publications that the JRC has published on the PRI. So regions are now supposed to define their sustainable development strategies. They should identify local challenges and opportunities and link them to the European Green Deal, and they should develop strategies that facilitate transformative innovations, so innovations that produce co-benefits for the economy, the society, and the environment. And a couple of months ago, you might have heard that, a couple of months ago, a pilot project on the PRI was launched. This is the next big policy experiment in Europe. In this pilot exercise, more than 60 regions and 7 cities and 4 nations are taking part. And this experiment is an important one to watch, because it remains to be seen how different types of regions will embrace the PRI, how they are going to incorporate PRI elements in their place-based policy repertoires. And it will be interesting to see how they work with enlarged stakeholder groups, what kind of transformative innovations will emerge, and which regions will benefit the most from transformative innovation. And it will be interesting to see how regions will ensure that economic concerns do not continue to trump environmental and social issues. So a crucial question is, of course, what can economic geography and related disciplines, so what can we contribute to gain a better understanding of the emerging or evolving geographies of transformative innovation, and what academic insights, theoretical insights, empirical insights could help to inform the next generation of place-based innovation policies. So what is the role of our disciplines? And well, some critical observers argue that we are not well positioned to make major contributions. So they question our research priorities and our theoretical frameworks and our empirical strategies. They argue that we would focus on innovation growth models that are often divorced from social and ecological context. And focusing specifically on the literature on the geography of innovation, which is my home base. So focusing on geography of innovation scholarship, I think it's time to ask the right questions. And it's time to reconsider our current understanding of innovation and to revisit and rethink the dominant approaches in our field. And in what follows, I will focus on the literature on regional innovation systems. The risk concept is one of the most popular concepts in the field, the geography of innovation. And as you, of course, know, the risk approach has many merits. This has proven to be a very powerful framework for explaining the complex systemic and place-based nature of innovation. It has provided a number of conceptual and empirical insights into how differences in industry mixes and organizational and institutional support structures and interactive learning. So how these place-based structures shape innovation and economic outcomes. And it has been a very important source of inspiration for regional policymakers. So risk scholars have really, I think, done a lot to inform the design and implementation of place-based innovation policies. However, in an era of multiple crises, the risk concept has also limitations. It is based on a very narrow and uncritical understanding of innovation. So, as you of course all know, risk concept, the conventional risk approach focuses first and foremost on technological innovations that are generated by the so-called Trippl helix actors, so by firms and research organizations, universities, and the state. Live together in rather stable networks, and there are institutional configurations, historically grown institutional configurations in place that support and reproduce such innovation patterns. So, and this is, of course, not very helpful when we talk about transformative innovation and the grand societal challenges of our time. So in a recent paper together with Franz Döckling and Veronika Tesch, we have sought to modify the risk approach. We sought to develop an alternative approach. We refer to it as challenge-oriented, as the challenge-oriented regional innovation system approach. It's an attempt to bring the risk concept in closer touch with an alternative understanding of innovation. It's an attempt to reorient the risk approach towards a new purpose, and that is solving place-based problems and needs. So our approach, the core risk approach, is of course inspired by a wider literature that has been developed in the recent past. The core risk approach builds on a more critical and progressive understanding of innovation. It is very much inspired by recent thinking on innovation systems. There is really nice work out there on dedicated innovation systems, or on temporary mission-oriented innovation systems. This is what Heckert in the Netherlands is propagating. A pop-up innovation systems, a concept that has been developed by Kuhn Franken. Our approach also ties in with recent debates on an alternative regional development agenda, one that is less centered on short-term growth and more focused on environmental sustainability and inclusive development. And the core risk approach is inspired by recent contributions that call for paying more attention to the geography of problems. So some scholars argue that there is not only a geography of innovation, there is also a geography of problems, and the geography of problems is different from the geography of innovation. So geography of problems means that different regions have different exposures to environmental and social challenges. They face different challenges. And these region-specific challenges should be key motivations for policy intervention. So prioritization should not only be based on entrepreneurial opportunities, but also on place-specific problems and needs. So then, in a nutshell, the core risk approach and how it differs from a conventional risk approach. The crucial difference, of course, concerns the purpose of innovation, where the purpose of innovation is no longer seen as one that promotes growth and competitiveness, but also solving place-based problems and needs. And with this new purpose, it's of course important to consider not only technological innovations, but also innovations that emerge in other areas, in the public sector, in the civil society. So user innovation, social innovation, institutional innovation deserve attention. And this broader set of innovations, so to say, are of course generated by a wider group of stakeholders, so not only by the so-called triple helix actors, but new innovation agents or actors that have been neglected so far, civil society actors, public sector actors, users, the vulnerable groups, those that are affected affected most by challenges, but also by the solutions, require attention. And last but not least, the core risk approach also involves to focus not only on the supply side, but also the demand side, the application side, so the experimentation, diffusion, and upscaling of innovation in the region and beyond deserve attention. So what are core risks? We can think of core risks of challenge-oriented innovation system as the wider regional or territorial context that reflects the capacity of regions to address various and partly interrelated problems and needs by developing challenge-oriented initiatives. And I will say more about challenge-oriented initiatives in a second. Want like to add two things here. The first one is that this regional and territorial context is, of course, embedded in and interacts with national and supranational settings. So it's the first important addition. And the other important addition is that problems and needs, place-specific problems and needs are interrelated, and the same holds true for the potential solutions. So solutions that actors develop in response to societal challenges can be characterized by a neutral relationship. They can reinforce each other, but there might also be a competitive relationship. So there might be trade-offs, tensions, and conflicts. And this is important when designing and implementing core risk policies. So then I would like to highlight now three aspects that are important in the context of core risk policies. The first one concerns the question, where should priorities and directionalities for regional innovations and transitions be set? In the region or elsewhere? And I will make a strong argument in favor of policies and strategies that are negotiated and cultivated in the region. The second one concerns the nature of core risk initiatives. We think of them as very comprehensive initiatives. They do not only involve innovation, but there are other core processes involved as well that are really important. And the third one relates to reflections on how real-world regional innovation systems need to change to provide the proper setup for core initiatives to emerge and to develop. So, first aspect, where should priorities and directionalities be set? A COVIS perspective really privileges policies and strategies that are negotiated and cultivated in the region over strategies and interventions that are done to the region. So it favors goal setting and the formulation of strategies by regional actors and communities rather than having directionality of change and innovation priorities imposed on them. And this is important for a variety of reasons. I think a key reason is that each region has its own unique problem endowment, and regional actors are best positioned to analyze the problems and come to grips with how to frame problems and what to do about them. So regional actors are best placed to set the development goals and design strategies to tackle the complex and often interrelated place-specific problems they are confronted with. And another reason is that such an approach might help to address the sources, manifestation, and consequences of growing discontent in Europe. You might be familiar with the literature on left behind places and the literature on the geographies of discontent. And in light of these developments and the increasing right-wing populism, a strategy that relies on external actors that tell the regions what they are supposed to do might not be the right response here. Good. Then the second aspect of the challenge-oriented initiatives, they can be seen as products of a challenge-oriented innovation system. So we think of them as temporary projects, set of temporary projects, temporary coalitions where heterogeneous stakeholders can join forces and coordinate their activities to address a particular territorial problem or need. And there are four core processes that matter here. The first one concerns the challenge asset identification. So this can be quite a tricky issue, in particular when it comes to the identification of challenges of identifying, framing, and formulating place-based problems. And this process is not straightforward. This has been shown in a recent paper by Flanagan and colleagues. This process can be very tricky. It involves questions such as what is perceived as a problem and what are the perceptions about the roots and the effects of problems, which ones are selected as priorities, by whom, and how is this done. And it's of course clear that different stakeholders have different understandings of these issues. And so much really depends on who is involved in these processes, who is shaping the discourse. And there is, of course, always the danger that powerful incumbents with vested interests capture the process. So this calls for policy actions then, or let's put it like this, the right selection of stakeholders. So the problem framing will have an impact on the second key process, which is the search for solutions, or the development and application of innovation and the upscaling of innovation in the region and beyond. And this might include the development or importation of new technologies, the development of non-technological solutions or combinations of both. Many sustainability challenges require indeed an integration of a range of technological and non-technological innovations. And depending on the case under consideration, also unlocking and so-called ex-novation activities could be important. So ex-novation or path destabilization, phasing out old industries and technologies and practices has long been a neglected theme in academic discussions and also in policy debates. But this is important. This is the flip side of transitions. So it involves to reveal and destabilize unsustainable activities, practices, networks, and institutional structures. And it involves to undermine vested interests and picking the losers. So, and these three core processes come, of course, with demanding orchestration needs. So there is multiple actors who populate a particular challenge-oriented initiatives. They may have very different interests and motivations, which call for mediation, formulation of shared visions, and setting collective priorities. Minimization of trade-offs and conflicts, and there is also a need, of course, for horizontal policy coordination and vertical policy coordination with and mobilization of support from national and EU policies. So, and let's turn to the third issue, which is about the question: how to enhance the challenge orientation of real-world regional innovation systems? So what kind of reconfiguration is needed to ensure that challenge-oriented initiatives are developed? And this question is important because historically grown, conventionally oriented real-world innovation systems do hardly back challenge-oriented initiatives. They are often unfit for addressing environmental and social challenges. And this is because established actor constellations, network practices, and institutional configurations constrain green and inclusive innovation and rather reinforce unsustainable pathways. So in recent papers, we have distinguished between two routes of core-risk development, the mobilization and reorientation of existing risk structures. This is the reorientation route, and this reorientation route is very different from the transformation route, which is the creation of involves the creation of new challenge-oriented structures and the dismantling of old structures. So in a nutshell, the reorientation route builds on and mobilizes the actors, networks, and institutional structures of existing risks, regional innovation systems to develop solutions to place-based problems and needs. So this route is about enhancing the challenge orientation of existing risk elements and functions. It's about redirecting elements and structures to new goals and purposes. And the transformation route involves the construction of new challenge-oriented structures. It's more about adding new elements to the regional innovation system and disrupting old one. So following this route entails greater inclusion of new or neglected innovation actors, the disruption of old networks, and the construction of new ones, and institutional change. So then a few words on what we are currently doing. So we are currently engaged in some further conceptual work of this CORIS way of thinking, and we have also begun to apply the CORIS approach in some of our empirical studies. Two examples here, and there are more, but I think those two examples are really nice ones. So in a project together with our partners in Norway, we have sought to do some conceptual work to link the CORIS approach to the notion of transformative resilience. So we asked ourselves if sudden shocks and crises can be a window of opportunity to enhance the challenge orientation of regional innovation systems, to tackle sustainability problems, and to initiate or accelerate green path development. So this is done together with Arne Isaksen and colleagues here in Vienna. We have looked into two case studies in Lower Austria and Stavanger in Norway, and I think this was really promising, both in conceptual terms of how the CORIS could be brought together with an more advanced concept of resilience, or not only back and bouncing forward without any directionality, but transformative resilience is really the core, and we think that the CORIS approach can contribute quite a bit to get a better understanding of transformative resilience. We have done, I think, a good paper on that. It has just been accepted for publication last Friday. So if you are interested in that work, I'm happy to send you the paper. And another project, this is the RIS for Danube project. It's also quite exciting. This is coordinated by my young, bright colleague, Simon Baumgartner-Seiringer, where many members of my working group here are involved. So in this project, we really try to explore the potential of CORIS initiatives for green transitions in a very particular context. So in disadvantaged regions or those that are at risk of becoming disadvantaged, so regions that are at risk of falling into so-called development trap, as Dima and Rodriguez-Bose have recently put it. We are investigating CORIS initiatives, barriers to CORIS development in 11 regions along the Danube, so the Danube macro regions. So many places are found in Southern and Eastern Europe, and this is we are still at the beginning, but the first empirical patterns are already emerging that tell us something, how difficult it is to develop CORIS initiatives in that particular context, in the context of challenged regions, if you want. So now to come to an end, 1 minute. So what the current next steps, I have already talked about that we are currently mapping and analyzing challenge-oriented initiatives, and we are also seeking to assess the outcomes, so to come to grips to the question what benefits are produced and for whom. And another aspect that really ranks high on our research agenda concerns conceptual and empirical work on risk reconfiguration patterns. So we want to get a better understanding why and how regions differ in their capacity to reconfigure their risks. And there is a lot of conceptual work involved to get a better understanding of structural preconditions, but it's not only structure, also agency is really important. So we currently trying to unravel the agency dynamics in CORIS development by paying close attention to the interplay between change agency, consolidation agency, and of course also maintenance agency needs to be factored into our analysis. So then I think I stop here. Thanks a lot for your attention. I'm looking forward to the co-presentation and to the discussion with the audience.
Yes, thank you very much, Michaela, for this really, really excellent overview on a challenge-based regional innovation system approach about the policies behind, about the development from the more conventional risk idea and also for the outlook. I think it was perfectly met also on points of time. And we now have the opportunity to ask back a couple of questions for clarification and understanding only. If that is the case, please raise your hand. I look into the list and then we can answer 2 or 3 questions if we need to. I will wait a further second. If that is not the case, then Michaela, congratulations. That was very clear in terms of understanding and what you said. And then I suggest we immediately move to the next presentation and to our next speaker. And I would like to welcome Professor Adam Koschenowicz. Adam Koschenowicz is working with IOER. And he is an economist, and he is head of a research group in our institute on sustainable economic dynamics and innovations. This research group focuses on economic interactions, of course, and he looks at this in now. Listen, socio-ecological, technological, spatial configurations. This language monster, so to say, is really chosen by purpose, because what we try and what Artem tries is also to integrate views from the socio-technical, from the socio-ecological discussion on transformation. And as we are a spatial institute, of course, we try to understand that, and he tries to understand that with regard to spatial configurations. And he's doing that with an analysis of actions of economic agents and resource scarcity, about conflicting objectives, and of course spatial dynamics. And at the end of pipe, of course, try to design, to think about economic instrument for spatial sustainability transformation. So what would it mean if we understand that to steer or to, let's say, navigate this kind of processes? And he will have a short co-presentation on our topic, and that fits very well because there's also a national funded project behind. And I've seen already in our audience some colleagues from our research group, from our project, are with us today. That is very nice. But I don't want to tell too much in the beginning, because Artem Koschenowicz will move into that. He has chosen the title of his co-presentation, Transformative Capacity and Regional Innovation System. Please, Artem, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So can you hear me and see the slides well? Great.
Perfect.
So, right, I will not answer all these questions that you kind of previewed. I will actually have a quite similar presentation in terms of the storyline, but I will work with a few further concepts on this. So, right, the background, as just mentioned, is that we just started a new project in which we aim to, at the question of activating regional innovation systems to contribute to sustainability transformations, and we are currently in the conceptual phase. And I will share some schematic description of our thinking with you. And further on, we will do empirical investigations in 4 regions in Germany and ask how the transformative capacities be assessed and developed or further developed there. So I will start by briefly introducing the concept of transformative capacity with which we wish to work. So the question that we ask is what enables stakeholders, for example, regional stakeholders, to purposefully initiate and perform change for sustainability. Well, so this question in itself is not new. So at least in the field of economics where I'm coming from, there has been a discussion for already more than 20 years on directed technical change, for example, or there has been a discussion on transformative capacity of industries. So this was also mentioned by Michaela Trippl in the presentation. Now what we want to work with is a concept is transformative capacity representing the power to change, as Mark Wolfram puts it in his paper. So, and this power to change arises from empowered actors that can modify the existing rules and mobilize resources to achieve a certain goal or pursue a certain vision of the future. So connected to, of course, sustainability related visions. So here I have highlighted the focus on actors and on the actors that are driven or led by a vision of the future, and they have the power to change. So, and to further illustrate it, I have brought a visual aid. So you can see a bicycle as a very sustainable mode of transport. And you can also notice that it is a Dutch bicycle, which also corresponds to the Dutch researchers, which contributed a lot to the notion of transformation. So now this kind of definition can be viewed as this image shows. So we have a vision as a front wheel, which kind of shows the direction, and we have the capacity, so this power to change, which is what allows the bicycle to drive, and we have the actors which have to implement this and have to work with this. And now the question now arises: at which scale are we talking about this, and whose capacity is this? So now understanding, now approach to this transformative capacity is not an attribute of an individual actor, of an individual, let's say, household or a firm, but it is a systemic property, yeah, which is attached to interacting actors within a dynamic institutional setting. And because it is a systemic property, it is also attached, or so these interactions happen within different spatial configurations. The spatial configurations, including both the natural and the built environment, and these interactions shape these spatial configurations. And in the literature, you can find references to local transformative capacities and national transformative capacities and global transformative capacities. And in this project, but also wider in the research we do in the Institute, we focus on the urban and regional scale. And the reasons for this basically have been also mentioned already in the presentation of Michaela Trippl. So on the one hand, this is where the challenges manifest. So the risks, for example, from the climate change, and also where, let's say, the appropriate flexible governance systems exist, which can react to these challenges. So now, continuing with the visual aid of the bicycle, here we can zoom into this capacity concept, and we can see that it includes material assets such as infrastructure, finances, immaterial assets such as the human capital, leadership, narratives of sustainable future, rules and norms. It also includes the connections between the actors and the processes that support the interaction, such as networks and governance, and also and very importantly, the experiments that are initiated by different actors, and where sustainable solutions are tried out, not only of, or primarily maybe in this context, not only of technological form, but also experiments in the social domains and organizational domains. Now, how to connect this to the innovation system questions and innovation system directionality? So we have seen again in the previous presentation definitions of the system. In the simplest way, you can speak about the network of innovation actors, and we can speak about triple helix with academia, industry, and government. And the regional innovation system, by one definition, has its aim to support the diffusion of knowledge, skills, and best practice within a certain functional area or region. And so when we want to translate this and connect it to what I just introduced as a concept of transformative capacity, we need to get back to this focus on the actors and also on the normative orientation towards sustainability transformation. And here we can try to define the transformative innovation system as an innovation system which is determined by the actors who strive for sustainability transformation and are supported by the respective capacities. So it's both things are important here. So this directionality and also the capacity, so this power to change. And we can again speak about this transformative innovation system on different spatial scales, including urban and regional scale. And when we talk about this, we have to speak of or take a broad understanding of innovation. Yeah, so including technological, but also different kinds of social and organizational innovations. And here I have a comparison, kind of an attempt to compare this idea of the transformative regional innovation system to the classical RIS. So we have also seen the elements of RIS in the presentation before. I have to highlight a few things here which kind of distinguish this transformative regional innovation system. So first is, of course, orientation on societal challenges. It is the outcomes of this innovation system should be, let's say, further going than the classical ones. Yeah, it's embedding an upscaling of niche innovations. It's the co-production involving a wide variety of stakeholders, and in the end, it is a transformative change. And of course, while doing so, it is so this innovation system should include activities which are experimental in its or in their orientation. It should include or create conditions for protected niches in which different types of innovations can develop and then spread. And it should include radical innovation, so which is going beyond the normal R&D based kind of incremental innovations. And it should also include the possibility to exnovate, to exclude certain types of developments. And if we now think, so how these two are related, so how the current regional innovation system is related to transformative one, I would think there is an overlap where is the transformative innovation system includes additional actors, but it also excludes certain elements of the classical RIS. I am coming to the final slide, which is now, so what possible orientation of the policy should be, and as already also been said, so we need an orientation of the policy on capacity development in different policy domains, because so it's not enough to have innovation policy in this respect. So because the policy development in different domains have to be coordinated, and a strong involvement of various stakeholders should be guaranteed. And a possible tool for this, at least what we are trying to implement in the project, are the so-called transformation arenas, transdisciplinary formats for joint vision and pathway development. Okay, so this was very shortly our take on this topic, and now we can come to the discussion time.